People like you always end up outside eventually. Vincent Hale said it loud enough for the entire hallway to hear. I stood frozen beside 2 ripped garbage bags stuffed with my clothes while apartment doors cracked open one by one. Faces peeked out. Nobody stepped in. Nobody said a word. Vincent held my eviction notice between 2 fingers like it disgusted him. "You're 3 weeks behind, Karen," he said. "This isn't a shelter." "That's not true," I said quickly. "I paid half already, I just need until Friday." He laughed. "Friday? You should have thought about Friday before pretending you belonged here." Behind him I spotted Mr. Leland from Unit 5C watching silently. He hadn't paid rent in months, everybody in the building knew it, yet he was still here. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. I looked back at Vincent. Why does everyone else get extensions? His smile turned sharp. Because they're worth keeping. A few people lowered their eyes. Then he looked me up and down and said the words that made the hallway go completely still. Broke trash always thinks the rules shouldn't apply to them. My face burned. 2 maintenance workers started dragging my boxes into the hall before I could stop them. "Wait, careful," I rushed forward as one nearly dropped my father's old briefcase. Vincent stepped between us and snatched my apartment keys from my hand. "You don't live here anymore." Then he slammed the door shut. The deadbolts clicked. And just like that, everything I owned was sitting in the hallway beside me. Rain hammered the windows outside, while people slowly disappeared back into their apartments. The same neighbors who borrowed sugar from me, the same people I helped carry groceries upstairs when the elevator broke. Nobody looked at me now. I crouched beside my bags in the lobby entrance, trying not to cry. Across the street, headlights suddenly cut through the rain. A long black sedan pulled up to the curb. The back door opened. An older woman stepped out wearing a dark coat and leather gloves. She looked directly at me like she already knew who I was. I'd never seen her before in my life. She walked over calmly while the rain soaked the shoulders of her coat. "You're Karen Holt?" she asked. I nodded slowly. Without another word, she placed a sealed envelope into my hands. My fingers trembled. "What is this?" She leaned close enough for only me to hear. "Go back in," she whispered, "and don't say a word." Before I could respond, she stepped back toward the car. I looked down at the envelope. Stamped across the seal was my late father's name. And underneath it, Hale Properties ownership records. I sat in the corner booth of a 24-hour diner 3 blocks from the building, staring at the envelope, while rainwater dripped from my sleeves onto the table. The waitress had already asked twice if I wanted coffee. I hadn't answered either time. Across from me, the older woman removed her gloves carefully and folded them beside a cup of untouched tea. "My name is Miriam," she said quietly. I looked at her. "How do you know my father?" "We work together." "That doesn't explain this." I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were photocopies of contracts, handwritten notes, legal forms, and a business card from a law office downtown. My father's handwriting covered the margins of several pages. One phrase kept appearing over and over. "Ownership percentages." I frowned. "This has to be wrong." Miriam didn't respond. "My father was a maintenance supervisor," I continued. "He fixed boilers, he painted walls, that's it." Miriam studied me for a moment before asking, "Did Vincent ever let you see the original lease records?" I almost laughed. Vincent barely lets tenants see their own paperwork. But the question stayed with me. Suddenly, memories started clicking together in ways they never had before. The rent increases that showed up without warning. Maintenance requests Vincent ignored unless I paid extra fees. The luxury units upstairs getting remodeled, while families downstairs dealt with leaking ceilings. And my father. Every time the building came up near the end of his life, he changed the subject immediately. Once I caught him staring at the apartment from his car for nearly 20 minutes without saying a word. I slowly looked back down at the papers. What exactly did my father protect? Miriam's expression tightened. He spent years making sure Vincent couldn't erase something important. Before I could ask another question, my phone buzzed violently against the table. I opened the notification. My stomach dropped. Vincent had already listed my apartment online. Available immediately. The posting included photos of my living room, my kitchen, even my daughter's old bedroom. I looked at the timestamp. The photos had been uploaded before he threw me out. He planned this, I whispered. Miriam nodded once. He's been preparing for a long time. I flipped through more pages desperately until I noticed several signatures highlighted in yellow. One of them belonged to my father. Another belonged to Vincent. And both signatures appeared under the words, Property Transfer Agreement. My chest tightened. What is this building really? Miriam glanced toward the diner windows before lowering her voice. If Vincent realizes you have those documents, he'll try to destroy them. Then she reached into her coat and slid a black keycard across the table. You need to go back upstairs tonight. I stared at it. Printed across the front in silver lettering were 4 words that made my pulse spike instantly. Executive Records Office. By the time I returned to the building, movers were already inside my apartment. Through the lobby windows, I could see them carrying out boxes like I'd never lived there at all. A group of tenants stood nearby pretending not to stare. The second I stepped through the front doors, Vincent spotted me. He actually laughed. You again, he said loudly, didn't understand the word evicted. I didn't answer. For the first time all night, I walked past him without trying to explain myself. That seemed to confuse him more than if I'd screamed. I tightened my grip around the keycard and headed straight toward the elevators leading to the executive floor. Vincent's smile disappeared instantly. Karen, he snapped, where are you going? I kept walking. He moved faster now, stepping in front of me. That floor is restricted. The elevator dinged open. Several tenants turned toward us. I could already see phones coming out. Move, I said quietly. Vincent stared at me hard, then his eyes dropped to the keycard in my hand. And panic flashed across his face for the first time. Security, he barked suddenly. Stop her. Nobody moved quickly enough. I slid the card against the scanner beside the executive office hallway. The light turned green. A heavy door unlocked with a click. The hallway behind me exploded with whispers. What the hell? How does she have access? Vincent shoved forward after me just as I entered the records office. Rows of filing cabinets lined the walls, locked drawers, tenant files, financial ledgers stacked across shelves. I opened the nearest cabinet. Lease agreements. Payment histories. Handwritten notes. My eyes moved rapidly down page after page. Unit 9A discounted rent approved personally by Vincent. Unit 11C 6-month extension. Unit 5C partial payment forgiveness. I froze. Mr. Leland hadn't lied. Neither had anyone else. Then I found my own file. 3 separate rent increases in under a year. No legal justification attached. Every increase approved directly by Vincent Hale. You had no right touching those. Vincent stormed toward me and grabbed for the folder in my hands. Instinctively, I pulled back. No, I said. Even I sounded surprised hearing it. His face darkened instantly. You think those papers change anything? He hissed. Then another voice cut through the room. Touch her again, Miriam said calmly from the doorway, and this becomes criminal. I turned. Miriam stood there beside 2 attorneys carrying document cases. Behind them, tenants crowded outside the office entrance recording everything. One man pointed directly at Vincent. You charged me late fees for months while giving discounts upstairs. A woman beside him shouted, You told us the building was struggling. Another tenant raised his phone. I paid this guy cash to stop eviction notices. The room erupted. Vincent looked around wildly as the crowd turned against him in real time. Then he pointed at me. Those records don't belong to her. Miriam's expression never changed. Actually, she said, they do. I looked down at the final folder in my hands. My father's initials were written across the tab. Slowly, I opened it. And there, on the very first page, was my father's signature beside Vincent's, under the original ownership agreement for the building. The hallway outside the records office turned into chaos within minutes. Tenants shouted over each other, while the attorneys spread documents across the conference table, photographing every page before anyone could remove them. Vincent slammed his hand against the desk. "Everybody out," he yelled, "now." Nobody listened. I stood frozen with the ownership agreement still in my hands, staring at my father's signature. It was real. Not copied. Not forged. Real. Miriam stepped beside me and pointed toward another document clipped underneath. "Read the transfer clause." My eyes moved down the page. In the event of death or incapacitation, ownership shares transfer to surviving heir, Karen Holt. I stopped breathing for a second. "What?" My voice barely came out. Another attorney carefully placed several county filing records beside the agreement. The dates didn't match. Signatures changed styles halfway through the documents. Pages had different notary stamps. One transfer form listed my father signing paperwork 3 days after he'd already been hospitalized. "He forged this," I whispered. Miriam nodded grimly. "We believe Vincent altered the ownership filings after your father became too sick to monitor the business." Behind us, tenants continued arguing loudly. "So he pushed people out on purpose. He kept raising rents downstairs. He told us renovations required new management." Then one older tenant stepped forward slowly. "He offered me reduced rent if I stayed quiet about empty units," the man admitted. The room went silent again. Vincent pointed furiously at him. "You don't know what you're talking about." But another tenant immediately added, "I saw him removing files from this office late at night." One of the attorneys opened security archives from the office computer. Video footage appeared on screen. Date after date. Vincent entering this office after midnight carrying boxes of records. My stomach twisted. He'd been covering this up for years. Then red and blue lights flashed through the lobby windows downstairs. "Police." Vincent straightened immediately. "This woman stole private records," he said quickly as officers entered the hallway. "She illegally accessed my office." One officer looked at the scattered documents. Another picked up the notarized ownership agreement. Then the officer looked directly at Vincent. "If these are stolen," he asked calmly, "why were documents belonging to her father hidden in your private office?" Vincent opened his mouth and said nothing. Not one word. For the first time since I'd moved into the building, I watched him completely lose control of the room. The same tenants who used to avoid eye contact with me were now standing behind me instead of him. As officers began escorting Vincent toward the elevators, he looked back at me with pure disbelief. "You have no idea what this building costs to run," he snapped. I tightened my grip on my father's briefcase. Maybe that's why my father owned half of it. Vincent stopped walking. The hallway fell completely silent. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Within 48 hours, housing investigators locked down the building's financial records. County officials reopened property transfer filings connected to Vincent Hale, and forensic accountants started tracing years of rent increases, hidden payments, and falsified ownership documents. Every day uncovered something worse. Vincent hadn't just forged signatures. He'd systematically pushed out lower-income tenants to increase the property's resale value before selling the building to a luxury development company. The tenants who looked wealthy got discounts and extensions because they made the building appear stable. Everyone else got squeezed until they left voluntarily or got humiliated publicly like I did. Including me. Especially me. Miriam sat beside me during one of the legal meetings and finally explained everything my father never told me. Years earlier, my father helped finance the building renovation when Vincent nearly lost the property during a lawsuit. In exchange, my father quietly became partial owner, but he kept his name hidden from tenants because Vincent controlled daily operations and had a reputation for retaliation. Then my father got sick, and Vincent saw an opportunity. He started altering records slowly, Miriam told me. Your father noticed before the end. I looked down at the handwritten note lying on the table in front of me. Karen deserves what's hers. If he forces her out publicly, give her everything. My throat tightened instantly. My father knew. He knew Vincent would eventually come after me. He contacted me 6 months before he died, Miriam continued softly. He was terrified Vincent was cleaning records. For a long moment I couldn't speak. All I could picture was my father sitting silently in his car outside the building, already understanding what kind of man Vincent really was. Then came the public fallout. Videos from the eviction spread online almost overnight. Thousands of people watched Vincent call me broke trash while throwing my belongings into the hallway. Former tenants started posting their own stories underneath the clips. News stations picked up the investigation after reporters confirmed multiple illegal eviction complaints tied to Hale properties. Vincent's business partners disappeared fast. Investors pulled out of the pending sale. Banks froze financing tied to the building. And the management company removed Vincent completely pending fraud charges. A week later, I walked back into my apartment carrying a new set of keys. Not as a tenant, as a legal stakeholder. The eviction notice was still taped to my door. I stared at it for a few seconds before slowly peeling it off. Downstairs, maintenance crews repaired plumbing Vincent ignored for years. Housing officials reviewed old rent records unit by unit. Families who'd been threatened with eviction were allowed to remain during the investigation. The atmosphere inside the building had completely changed. Neighbors who once avoided looking at me now stopped me in the hallway to apologize. I should have said something sooner. We all knew something was wrong. I'm sorry. I nodded politely, but honestly I didn't know how to respond yet. One thing I did know was this. I wasn't leaving. Several developers offered to buy my inherited share immediately after the story became public. Miriam warned me the offers would only increase. But I turned them all down. Instead, I worked with attorneys and housing officials to restructure tenant policies fairly, transparent leases, clear payment protections, no hidden increases, no selective treatment. For the first time in years, people in the building stopped living in fear of random notices taped to their doors. Then one evening, I stepped into the lobby and saw movers carrying Vincent's office furniture toward the exit. Nobody helped him. Nobody spoke to him. The same lobby where he humiliated me had gone completely silent for a different reason. Vincent walked behind the movers with his head lowered until he noticed me standing near the mailboxes holding my father's old briefcase. He stopped near the front doors. "You got lucky," he muttered bitterly. I looked at him for a second. Then I shook my head. "No," I said calmly, "you just thought nobody would ever check." I walked past him and deeper into the building my father helped create. While Vincent stepped outside alone,